But anyway, let me bring up another one. What about NATO? Here's the president last night about his favorite member of NATO these days. Take a listen.
And I said, you know, Angela, I can't guarantee it, but we're protecting you, and it means a lot more to you than protecting us, because I don't know how much protection we get by protecting you.
Well, later in the show, we're going to get into a little bit of a history lesson of World War II, because somebody over there might need one. But how do you change his mind on a NATO? For instance, I was with somebody today who said, you know, the policy of the United States hasn't changed, but they acknowledge they don't know what he will do at the meeting.
Yeah, I think it has the same problem that trade has, which is it doesn't make for good television to talk about NATO. So even though people are going to try to do as many interviews as possible next week, we are going to see pictures from it. The time zones are going to be a little bit off when you see those pictures. I think he does not think his base cares what he does about NATO, and so he can do whatever he wants to do.
His base has a bit of an isolationist streak, too, so they don't mind this, right?
His base enjoys hearing him say, we've been treated like schmucks, and we're not going to take it anymore.
And the other people should pay more money.
And the other people should pay more money.
Yeah.
And you know what? He does have a point. The other people should pay more money. If you look at I was looking at a chart this morning, and Germany is not paying its fair share. Other presidents have made that point. They've made it without the kind of threatening language.
Yeah, there's sort of a subtlety you do with it.
And the ambassador to NATO, Kay Bailey Hutchison, did a conference call yesterday, and she did that subtly too, but she sort of praised some of our partners in NATO by saying, you know, a lot of people, like I think she said 16 countries have increased the amount of money they're spending in NATO, including Germany, though Germany not quite to the number that President Trump wants them to be at.
They're raw dollars? I mean, that's it, but they're raw. Don't forget, Germany's economy is larger than everybody else's, so in raw dollars, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, but she is still being careful, and it was in some ways, it was funny to listen to this conference call and have her, number one, dismiss this idea of Germany and taking the troops out, and is that going to come up at NATO, and know exactly what the President of the United States has said about it. But everyone else around him who does this is careful.
But I'll say this. Well, first of all, it definitely plays with his base. I don't think they understand the real importance, the impact of NATO. So it does play to the base very well. However, I must say that having been in Italy for a couple of weeks now.
Nice tan.
Show off.
Well, but what I'm seeing in Europe is some leaders starting to support Trump, using Trump
certainly
like
you were in the one country that government is a pro-Trump government.
So within NATO as well, and other countries as well, that may end up agreeing or understanding or supporting Trump. So Europe is in a very interesting situation where it's not a monolith. I mean, there are big divisions in Europe. So, and I think Trump, by doing this, is also taking advantage of those divisions.
That I agree. In fact, I think you can bully the EU on tariffs. I think you can bully the EU on a lot of things right now in NATO because of those perceived weaknesses. The problem is you can't bully China. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.